Hi, my name is Jon Puleston. I'm from GMI, and I'm here today to talk to you about some of the secrets of gathering ethnographic style data from online surveys. Just a little bit of a background. I oversee a team responsible for developing interactive surveys for clients, various clients around the world. But we also, within my organisation, conduct an awful lot of research looking at how to stimulate respondents to give more effective feedback by making the surveys more engaging, conducting an awful lot of experiments in this area, and publish a few topics on papers on this topic. And really, what I'm presenting today is a sort of summary of best practice on our experience of doing this type of work within an online survey environment. In essence, the process of gathering ethnographic style data is very difficult in conventional surveying terms. You have two hurdles. One, obviously ethnography is all about observation, and when you're doing it with an online survey, you're asking people to self-observe, and getting people to open up and talk about themselves in an online survey environment is actually quite difficult. You've also got the problem that mostly involves typing lots of things into open-ended boxes, and that is one of the things that respondents really don't enjoy doing too much of, and there's a sort of tolerance limit to which they'll do that within a traditional survey environment. So what lessons have we learned along the way? Well, I think a starting point was really when people click on a survey like this, it does help to make them give a sense that it's important. Asking people to do something, put a bit more effort into a piece of research, really can be, you can get much richer responses if they feel that the thing that they're doing is something that is valuable, is special. And so we put a lot of thought into the design of literally the opening page of our survey. So when they click on the link, they think, that looks interesting, I want to be involved, I want to take part in that. At the next level up, it's really about establishing a rapport. And I would advise anyone thinking about doing any form of ethnography research to study something like Aristotle or linguistic programming books. It's a very much a qualitative art form that we're transposing in many respects in this to an online environment. Although that's a little bit highbrow, maybe I suggest you watch episode 4, season 4 of Mad Men, the brilliant episode with the market researcher there, where she, a comedian-like, transforms herself into the sort of guise of a secretary to gather some, in fact, some ethnographic feedback on people's attitudes towards some skincare products. And that's a really good example about the importance of being on a level with the people that you're talking to. And you can do that within the survey environment, and there are a couple of tricks to that. Firstly, where possible, try and be as candid, as open as you can about the objectives to research. That really does help. And the way that the language that you use to write the questions and communicate to people really does need to be on their level, on a human level. It's all too easy with online surveys to make the language very, in a sense, sort of research speak, which really doesn't help to stimulate people to give you feedback. A couple of good examples of what I mean here. This is an experiment we did where we asked people to talk about the experience of using baby wipes. And we opened it up with a visual intro, firstly underlining how important we thought that their opinions were, and secondly by explaining what we needed to do with the information and what was going to be used by the information, and sort of emotionally sort of reinforcing the value of what they were giving the information back to. And this technique, well, it easily trebled the volume and quality of feedback we got back from respondents. Another great example is borrowed from Insight Consulting. They actually show a picture of the researcher who's doing the research for you, and really is a beautiful idea to humanize who's doing the research. It's a lot easier to think you're talking to a human being than a computer. The next point is about warming them up. And I don't know that I necessarily need to explain the value of warming people up, but if you have problems with getting your head around the value of warming anything up, I suggest you read some recommended reading there for you. But it's about really not jumping in and asking sort of complicated, difficult questions. It's about working out how to get them to start thinking about themselves, thinking of ways of asking questions that encourage them to be a slightly narcissistic viewpoint on things and try to be open up and honest about themselves. So a good example of that we've experienced would be how would your friends describe you in one sentence? A very simple question, but people seem to enjoy answering that. Or use 3 words to describe, say, your dress sense, or name some guilty pleasures. These sorts of things that are fun, but allow people to be reflective about themselves and be candid and basically start to get their brains working the way you want them to think for the rest of the survey. Another really brilliant technique we've discovered is as a projective methodology, where at the start of the survey, instead of saying we want you to give some feedback, you say, imagine you're being interviewed by a magazine. And we found that this is probably one of the most powerful techniques we've ever discovered in jumping the quality of the word count, and not just the word count, but the responses we were getting from people. People in that, they can get their head around this idea that what would I say if I were being interviewed by a magazine, and it ups their game to a certain extent. The way I look at it, any form of ethnography research, in fact any form of research really, is about getting people over that hill at the beginning. It's actually often quite a big hill. They start off with a bit of guarded reticence, and once you've opened them up and you're talking to them on level and got them more interested in doing the task, it really does open the floodgates, we find, into improving the responses. So all those things that look like perhaps quite a lot of effort, but they can make 2, 3-fold improvements in the quality of feedback you're getting if you set the tone right. The next point I would add is how important imagery is within the context of getting people to do a long task. They really help to really, how to describe it, draw people through a survey and keep them interested. We found that they're brilliant at helping people to trigger their memories and stimulate their imagination when they're thinking about a task. It really does help to obviously tailor these to the individual. So here in this example, we're looking at people's musical interests, and some people obviously were highbrow, some slightly lowbrow, and we adjusted the imagery accordingly to make it relevant to the individual. Here is a sort of quite a frightening chart really, is that what images help to do is extend the length and life of the survey and extend the interest. And what we find is that the moment you start boring them, you've lost them. You see this rapid tailing off of the word count from questions. If you at the point at which people start to get a bit bored, this is a very good example of the word count we were getting question by question. Question 24, it really started to die off badly, and we failed to get people's engagement at that point onwards. And that, in a sense, we'd overcooked it at that point. But by nature, the average person, propensity to write something in the box declines by about 50% after about 15 minutes of questioning. Another way we found to encourage people to write more or give you the types of responses you want to have is by showing them examples. And I really do advocate this. Showing people an example helps to set expectations of what you expect them to write. It helps to guide people who are not quite sure what to say. And it also helps can help reassure response that there's no expectations on perfect language or spelling or anything like that, which is often a bit of a hurdle for some types of respondent. Here's a good example of what I consider to be sort of a nicely laid out ethnographic question style. We employ a word counter, which is really good. We basically tells them how many words they've written or how many words more you want them to write. It's got a prompt to click to view an example of what somebody else has written if they can't think of something themselves, and it's obviously got the visual emotional cue of reinforcing this idea of it being an interview with somebody. So I think that's a very good example of how I would recommend you laying out a question like this. The other thing is, often when you're doing these sorts of long surveys, you're asking lots of detailed, intimate questions. It actually does help to break that up with more traditional questions. And you can use these in a sense as thought leaders to get them to think about a topic. Like, for example, you can give a list of things they might have done and ask them to tick what they've done, and then get them to talk about some of those things that they've selected. This, we found, really helps to open up people's imaginations and memories of a particular activity in a nice way, and can really break up a survey and lead through to people to give more broader, thoughtful answers on all sorts of levels. Now, I resist the temptation to go on about game playing. This is a big topic of interest of mine, but I would say that any form of game playing technique we've introduced in this type of survey environment has proved extremely successful. In particular, time challenges. If you ask people, say you've got 2 minutes to talk about something on a topic, you might see that as a bit of a time restraint, but in reality, most people, when they're answering questions, only spend 30 seconds a minute answering a question. So by saying they've got 2 minutes, it's actually twice as long, 3 times as long as they would normally naturally spend. And it seems to trigger actually a lot more feedback for some reason. The final point really is how valuable we think piloting is in this type of research study. More than any other type of research, when you're trying to gather ethnographic style data, piloting really is valuable because even the most subtle differences in wording can make a difference and big impact in wording. And the improvement gains can be not just marginal, we're not talking about 5, 10, 15% improvements in the quality of volume of data. You can see upwards of 3 times improvements by employing the right types of technique, looking at question by question level, the individual responses it had, the point at which people are getting bored, you can notice, and so on. So piloting, I think, is a critical element of this type of research. A couple of technical things. Quite a lot of people are interested in uploading images in this type of task. Again, you have to. It's sensitive to approach. So the compliance range for uploading pictures can be anywhere between 5% and 50% based upon your technique. You need to teach them how to do it. So you also often have to overcome their barriers to doing it. And we found that a basic piece of psychology of showing them some loads and loads of pictures of what other people have done and they've done it puts their mind at ease that it's something that it's the popular thing to do. That technique really works. Also, by explaining that what you're going to do with the imagery, i.e., that they're not going to be blasted on the front cover of something, or it's going to be the content's going to be used with discretion. I think it's an important factor there too. Another area is remote videoing interviewing. The technology is there to do it in an online survey. We can actually get people to do webcam interviews directly within an online survey environment, but if I'm honest, I can't honestly say that we've had much luck doing it. It's almost impossible to get people to talk to a video without a human being on the other end of it, we've discovered. That saying, remote videoing interview techniques, particularly with things like Skype, I know are particularly successful within the ethnographic domain. So we wouldn't want to diss the basic techniques, but it's very difficult to do it within a sort of standalone online survey. On the horizon, what we're looking at right now is more incentivized ways to get people to give feedback, more sort of points-based, incentivizing good responses, not just for responding. And we're playing around right now with some viral distributed ethnographic research, which I'm going to talk about. I want to put a paper I'm writing right now. It's quite an exciting technique, actually. Final thoughts really are that gathering quality ethnographic artifacts from respondents really does boil down to how you ask the question, and it is an art form. I do see writing surveys in this sense as being a creative process. A lot to be learned from qualitative researchers in this arena, and that if you're going to do it, I think that it probably requires a lot more sort of creative thought and effort than perhaps a traditional survey. So that's it. Thanks very much for listening to me. Do contact me if you've got any questions about these techniques.